Welcome to this new how-to. In this how-to we're gonna look at how you can start the engines of this nice Concorde aircraft which has been released yesterday and is created by DC Designs. So let's go inside. So we can see a lot of buttons right here, right? And we can see a lot of buttons there, even more buttons. So it's always a puzzle where to start, right? So luckily there's a nice checklist included. So if we go here and we go to the checklist, we can see what we need to do. So we need to complete 19 tasks before we start the engine. So first of all, we're gonna validate if the landing gear is down, right? So the landing gear can be found, let me move one back, can be found here, right? So normally it's down. If you put it up now, then something really worse would happen, right? So we're gonna validate if the parking brake is set, and the parking brake is set here. So make sure that you're aware of that. And then we're going to go to the blue inverter and the green inverter. And the blue inverter and green inverter are by default already set to on, although that looks like to be, because it's some of the things are, I would say, not I would say frustrating, but some of the things are weird because it looks like that it's now switched to off, right? If you do it like this, it's switched to on. And then some of the labels are, I would say, a little bit misleading, but I will show you some other examples. So both of them are already set to on, right? Also the green inverter, which is over here. Then we've got the flight control, the green inverter, that's this one. And then we've got the anti-stall systems. The anti-stall systems are over here, right? You can see that they're on already, so that's good. Then we can go to the QNH, the altimeter. You can simply reset that by pressing the letter B from Bravo. That will set it by default correct. And then you can fine-tune the radios, right? We will leave them by default now, but you can use either the left button or the right button, right? The left button to change the number before the digit, and the right button to change the number after the digit. Then we've got the transponder code. The transponder code, you can configure it over here. But normally, I would say you would expect that you would have clearance from ATC, and then you will start doing this piece, right? So keep that in mind. Then we've got the ground checks, and this is where the funny thing happens, right? So if you look here, you would think, hey, it's to the right side, but if you continue to move to the right, it will continue to move, and then you will figure out it's on the back plane, right? So on the, I would say, part where the, person sits who manages all these nice buttons, there's a lot of stuff, right? Including the, this button, right? The hydraulics track, it needs to be set to yellow, which is good. Then we can go over to the fuel heaters, and the fuel heaters can be found here, so they can be switched to on if not already done, so that's also correct in this case. And then we go to the circulator, the engine circulation valves, they need to be set to shut, which is the case. And then we can validate the auto, the secondary doors, and those are by default set to open, but you need to set them all to auto, right? So that's also done. Then we can go back to the FMC or FMS INS button, and I would say that's a kind of a special one. So let me have a look at it a little bit closer, right? You've got multiple options here, and although it might be a little bit hard to see, let me zoom in here. Here you can set multiple things, right? You can set it to position, to XTK, you can set it to heading, to TK and GS. GS stands for glide scope. You can set to position, and then DME, which is the distance measure equipment, the wind, and the DSRTK or the STS. And we will figure out later on where we can use that button for, but not in this video, but in a future video. So that's done. Let's go back to the seat belts, and the seat belts are on the top of the panel. So I'm going to reset the view, and then use the mouse to move around. So we will set it to on, right? That's done. And then you can come to the view aircraft weight check. Well, there's, I would say, a check which you can perform. Not here, right? Because although I would say the indicator shows it here, that was due to the fact that I selected the seatbelt signal. You can find the weight and the fuel here, right? So if you click this button, you can set the fuel. You can see that the aircraft has multiple tanks, both engine feeds, tank 1 to 4. Then we've got the main transfer tanks, 5 up till 7. And then we've got the trim transfer tank, number 11. And number 9 and 10 are here on the top. Besides that, we've got the payload, right, for the passengers, both the pilot, co-pilot, the flight engineer. That was the person I was looking for, right? The label I was looking for, because that's the person who sits normally in front of this display. We've got the crew, we've got the business class, we've got the forward baggage, the rear baggage, and that comes to, let's say, a certain, I would say, empty weight, but also a fuel weight, including a maximum fuel weight, also the payload and the maximum payload, and then of course a total and max takeoff weight for the aircraft. I will accept everything as default, right? If you want to have these settings in LB instead of GAL, then you can use this button. And you can also review the tanks by using this one. That will review the tanks, right? So you can, if you set it to high, which I'm doing in this case, you can see that both the payload and the maximum takeoff is too high. So we need either to dump some people from the aircraft or decrease the baggage, or we need to decrease the fuel which we take with us. So in this case, 95%. That's okay. So that's, I would say, for this part, right? So a lot of cool things. You can see that nothing is, I would say, turned on yet in the aircraft. So be aware of that. Don't expect anything to already, I'd say, start illuminating or things to, I would say, pop up. Lightning is over here, right? But that's what we're gonna do after we switched, or not after. One of the lights we're gonna switch on, I should say. We're gonna switch on the beacon light, which is, and this is also something weird, right? You can see there's 3 positions. So my assumption is that you need to set it like this. Maybe the center position is, I would say, auto or something, but this is something weird. So already report the issue to the developers so that they need to look into this, because it looks like this is needs to be fixed in a future version, which they're gonna release. Then we've got the throttles, which are set to idle, right? The throttles, we can find them here, so we can push and set them back. And then we come to the engine feed pumps. And the engine feed pumps, right? You might think, hey, where are those things? Again, right? If you push on the icon, you will see that they're over on the back plane, again, on the central pane where the flight technician is located. So let's go over there. And then we can go to the bottom, a little bit here, and then zoom in, because they're located here, right? We've got the engine feed pumps, and then we need to switch them to on, all right, if not already, but in this case they're already set to on, which is good. So now we've completed that part. Let's go to the next part, which is really starting the engine. And the first thing we're going to do for that is making sure that we've got some electricity. So the electricity, this one is used for external power, which means that we're connected to an external power supply delivered by one of the battery packs, which is normally standing close to the aircraft, right? So let's have a look. Normally you would expect a truck to be there, which delivers the power. It's this one normally. But you don't really need to have it, I would say, near you, because you can, I would say, kind of trick flight simulator, right? And then switch to on, which means that the external power is switched on. So that's good. Then we've got the ESP switches, which are a little bit lower. And the ESP switches are for the battery, right? So if you switch them on, you will hear a nasty sound. And you will also see that the meters are adjusting, right? So here you can see it's off. Here you can see, and here it's on. So that's good. once that's done, we can go to the light here and validate that the light is burning, right? So it's kind of hard to see. If not, then we can switch it on, right? Because this light needs to burn, and then you can close it to avoid that you're by accident switch it off. Then we go to the other things, because we need to make sure that we can start the engines. So we need to start the engine bleed. So we're gonna switch all the engine bleeds to on. So that's done, right? You don't see any PSI here yet. Then we are coming to the LP bleeds, and that's a little bit lower. And sometimes it's a little bit nasty because it looks like, right? So the LP bleeds, I think it are these buttons. Yeah, the low pressure bleeds. So LP stands for low pressure. It's something we learned just in a few minutes. And then you need to switch all 4 of them. So 1 and 2 are here, and then the other ones are here, right? So don't forget to switch them on and close the buttons. And then we continue with the cross valves, which are here. So this means it's closed. If you do it like this, right? Let's move the cursor. You can see that it continues this line, which means it's open. So we're gonna open them. All fine. And then we're coming to the next piece, which is switching on the engine. And this is where the weird stuff happens, right? You would say, okay, hey, set the starter to on. But if you look at this label, you would expect that if you would move up the button, it's actually off. However, if you look at all the gouges, especially the gouges of the engine there, you will see that it starts to increase, right? You can see that the N2 starts to increase. So that again is, I would say, looks like a bug in the aircraft. So I also reported this one already, because it's, I would say, a little bit weird that it happens like that. So once it's in the good state, right, in the green started state, so let's wait for that. So this is green, right? It's already in green state, so that's good. So let's have a look here. We don't see that much, right? Also here you don't see much happening, to be honest. The only thing you can see is that the temperature increases, right? You can see the temperature and also this one. But there's no, I would say, green item besides the items. Where did I find them? There were signals where you could see the engines. Oh, over here, right? So here you can see the engine status. So if it's green, then so fine, or if none of them are burning anymore. And then you can continue with the next one, right? And the next one is, well, engine number 2. And you will see that once the engine is started, it will automatically switch the starter off, right? Doesn't make sense to leave the starter on. So if you want to quickly see if it does its work, you can see that the N2 here already increases. So that's good. And you hear the click, that switches off. In the meantime, you can see that the oil temperature increases, and also the P7 will start to increase soon. You can see it goes slowly, it goes a little bit faster after that. Once you've switched on engine number 1 and 2, you can switch off the EPU switch, which is this one. Close it. Hopefully we didn't do it too fast, because we didn't wait till everything was started, right? So, and then you can request pushback. And once you requested pushback and the pushback is completed, normally that's when you start engine number 3 and 4. I would say it's kind of a weird, weird order, right? Normally what you would do is you first let the aircraft being pushed back. Once you're in position, you will, I would say, switch on the engines. because it could, I would say, result in serious damage if you switch on the engines in some cases. But let's assume that we just did the pushback, right? We can do engine 3 and 4. So let's do that. Or 1 and 4. So we're going to switch on engine 1. Then we will see exactly the same happening. Also, it will go slowly into the 2. Or in the 20, sorry, and then at least I hope, because it's kind of weird because we need to switch off this one. So if you ask me, I do think it might be a mistake in the manual. Might be, I'm not sure. Because as you can see, really nothing happens. Let's wait a little bit longer. Nothing happens here, right? So it's not good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch on that EPU again. And then we're gonna switch on engine 1. So now you can see it directly starts to increase, right? So I'm not sure if this is an error in the manual or something else is wrong. But this is at least how I figured out how to start the engines, because yeah, I already practiced, of course, one time with this. Not too many times, because then it's not fun. And once the engine is started, you can do the other one, right? So you can continue with the other one, and you can see the temperature increasing, you can see the P7s increasing. The rest of it stays, I would say, pretty stable. If we look at, I'd say, the top one, if you look at this one, right, the fuel temperature, you can see that it changes. It's I would say it changes. It's different for engine number 2, 3, and 4 compared to the other one. Not sure what's the result of that. You can see that the PSI is also increasing here, and the PSI is the same thing as what we see here, right? So you can either look here on this small dashboard, or we can have a look at the let's say central display, which we just did. Then once that all has been done, we can continue with the AFS and trim set. That one isn't highlighted, if I'm correct. No, because it still points to the latest one, which is the EPU switch. Then we go to the stability step fuel switches. So the step fuel switches are over here. So these are the switches, right? So the auto stabilization, right? You can switch them on or off. And this, again, I do think that this is on, but that's just a guess. So that's good. Anti-ice, right? Anti-ice can be found here. So you can switch on the anti-ice for all 4 engines, right? All things are separate per engine. And we've got, of course, the hydraulics and electrics are in the, I would say, in the limits, right? As long as everything is in green, and we look at this end, it's also fine. And then I would say you're clear to go, and then you can go to the taxi, right? So you can obtain clearance and then follow the rest. There are some things, especially one thing which I figured out yesterday, and I would say yesterday I didn't read the manual, of course. And I was reading the manual later that evening, and I thought, okay, hey, what's causing, I would say, this piece, right? Remember that I would say at one place this piece started to go down. Well, that I figured out that that's, I would say, caused by the flaps lever. So what you can do with the flaps lever, let me do it. We set it to 1, then we need to wait a while. And what you then will see is that this part starts to move down. And someone else told me that even if you go further, it will, I would say, change the nose, right? Because currently the nose, which is kind of straight, right? So it's kind of straight set. So nothing weird. And you can see that this part now starts to move. So this is referred to as the flaps on the in the cockpit. I'm not sure if they are really called the flaps, to be honest. And if we would move even further, right? So let me reset the view and let's move it to the maximum position. What happens is that it goes even further, right? It will simply move the nose down. So kind of cool to see, right? It can move the nose down and you can control it using these buttons. So the recommended setting for let's say taxiing is 5 degrees, and I think that you don't need to decrease it further based on, I would say, what I saw. Rotate. No, the rest of the settings are here, right? So there are still a lot of let's say things which are really cool, and we can really use it. So in this video we specifically looked at how to start the engine from scratch. We did it using the checklist, right? So we cheated a bit, but that's all it say. That shows also the value of that checklist and why it has been provided. The good thing is that you can also find the same checklist in the PDF document, right? In the PDF document, which is in the community folder. Then go to the DC Design Concorde folder, and inside there's a documentation folder where you can get documentation, so you can make sure that you're, let's say, operating the aircraft as you should, because there are some things which you need to be aware of, especially if you want to fly it at the Mach 2 speed. Here ends this video. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you've got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date with new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.